Look, I'm going to be straight with you. When Command assigned me to evaluate the human recruits at Station Kappa-9, I thought it was going to be the easiest rotation of my career. I mean, come on. Humans? Those soft pink creatures who couldn't even survive their own planet's natural predators without inventing tools? Please. My name is Vorath, and I've been training recruits for the Galactic Defense Initiative for 23 cycles. I've seen species from every corner of the known galaxy. The Krell, with their armored hides that could stop a plasma bolt. The Thanics, who could tear through Durasteel with their bare claws. The Morgothi, whose reflexes were so fast they could snatch photons out of the air. Well, not literally, but you get my point. And then there were the humans. The first batch arrived on a Tuesday, which should have been my first warning sign. Nothing good ever happens on a Tuesday. There were 15 of them, all dressed in these ridiculous matching jumpsuits that were apparently standard issue from their home world. They shuffled into my training hall like a bunch of juveniles on their first day of education pod. "All right, listen up," I barked, my mandibles clicking in what I hoped was an intimidating fashion. "I am Instructor Vorath, and for the next 8 weeks, I will be responsible for determining whether you pathetic sacks of water have what it takes to serve in the GDI." A few of them flinched. Good. Fear was a start. "Now, I've reviewed your species' physical specifications," I continued, pacing back and forth on my 6 legs. "And I have to say, I'm not impressed. You have no natural armor, no claws, no venom sacs. Your bones break if you look at them wrong. Your skin tears easier than wet paper. And don't even get me started on your complete lack of redundant organs." One of the humans, a tall male with dark skin and even darker eyes, raised his hand. "What?" I snapped. "Sir, with all due respect, we didn't come here to be compared to other species. We came here to prove ourselves." I laughed. Actually laughed. The sound echoed off the walls of the training hall, a chittering, clicking noise that made half the humans take a step back. "Prove yourselves? Oh, this is rich. Tell me, Marcus, was it?" "Malcolm, sir." "Whatever. Tell me, Malcolm, what exactly do you think you're going to prove? That you can bleed? Because trust me, we already know you're good at that." The human's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Smart. Maybe these creatures had some sense of self-preservation after all. Right then. Let's start with something simple. Physical conditioning. Everyone to the exercise yard. Now. They filed out, and I have to admit, I was already mentally composing my report to Command. This was going to be a short evaluation period. Very short. The exercise yard was a standard setup. Gravity plates that could be adjusted up to 5 times normal. Obstacle courses that would challenge even the most athletic species. Strength testing equipment that could measure force output down to the micronewton. "We'll begin with a basic assessment," I announced. "Step up to the force plate, one at a time, and deliver your strongest strike. This will establish your baseline." The first human, a female with red hair tied back in some kind of primitive knot, approached the plate. She was small, probably only about 60 kilograms. This was going to be embarrassing. "Go ahead," I said, not even trying to hide the amusement in my voice. "Hit it as hard as you can." She wound up, her face scrunching in concentration, and threw a punch at the plate. The readout blinked. 73 newtons. I burst out laughing. I couldn't help it. 73 newtons! My nephew could hit harder than that, and he was still in his larval stage. "Is that it?" I wheezed between laughs. "Is that seriously the best you can do?" The human, her face now matching the color of her hair, stepped back. I can try." "Again, sir." "Oh, please do. This is the most entertainment I've had in months." She approached the plate again, and I could see her entire body trembling. Whether from anger or exertion, I couldn't tell. Probably both. She pulled her arm back, took a deep breath, and struck. The world exploded. "No, seriously, That's what it felt like. One moment I was standing there, thoroughly enjoying myself, and the next moment there was a sound like a thunderclap, and the force plate, all 3 tons of reinforced composite material, just shattered. Pieces of it embedded themselves in the walls. The shockwave knocked me back 3 steps, which, let me tell you, is not easy to do when you have 6 legs. The silence that followed was deafening. I stared at the crater where the force plate used to be, then at the human, who was standing there with her fist still extended, looking just as shocked as I felt. "What?" I said slowly, my vocal processor barely functioning. "In the name of the eternal void was that?" The human, whose name I would later learn was Keiko, looked at her hand like she'd never seen it before. I don't know, sir. I hit it harder? 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 You didn't hit it harder. You obliterated it. That plate was rated to withstand strikes of up to 50,000 newtons. Is that bad? Asked another human, this one a shorter male with glasses perched on his nose. Bad? Bad? That's not bad, that's impossible. Your species' muscular structure shouldn't be capable of generating that kind of force. It violates at least 3 laws of physics. Actually, said the one with glasses, pushing them up his nose in a gesture I would come to know and hate. It doesn't violate any laws of physics. It's just biomechanics. You see, human muscle tissue has this property where, I don't care about your muscle tissue, I shrieked. I care about the fact that this tiny human just destroyed a piece of equipment that cost more than my annual salary. To be fair, sir, Malcolm spoke up, you did tell her to hit it as hard as she could. The other humans made a noise that I would later learn was called trying not to laugh. It sounded like a bunch of small animals choking. I pointed one of my manipulator arms at the group. You! All of you! Stay right there! Don't move! Don't even breathe funny. I scuttled out of the exercise yard as fast as my legs could carry me, which was pretty fast, let me tell you. I needed to contact command. This was way above my pay grade. I burst into the communications room, startling junior technician Plexus, who had been enjoying what appeared to be a relaxing shift. Sir? Is everything? Get me Commander Thrace. Now. Priority Alpha. Plexus's eye stalks went rigid. Priority Alpha was reserved for imminent threats to station security. Sir, what's now? It took 30 seconds for the connection to establish. Commander Thrace's face, or what passed for a face among the Valorian species, appeared on the screen. She did not look happy to be disturbed. This had better be good, Vorath. I was in the middle of, the humans are broken. She blinked, all 4 of her eyes. Excuse me? The humans! They're defective! There's something seriously wrong with them. One of them just punched through a force plate. Vorath, have you been sampling the medical supplies again? We talked about this. I'm completely sober. I'm telling you, this human, she couldn't have weighed more than 60 kilos, and she just casually destroyed a 3-ton piece of reinforced equipment. Commander Thrace was quiet for a moment. Then, show me the footage. I pulled up the recording from the exercise yard and transmitted it. Watching it again, even I could barely believe it. The human's first punch, weak and ineffective. My laughter, which now seemed incredibly foolish. And then that second strike, the one that defied all logic and reason. The commander watched in silence. When it was over, she sat back in her chair. Well, she said finally, that's interesting. Interesting? Interesting? Commander? With all due respect, we can't train these things. They're a liability. What if one of them decides to punch their way through the hull? What if they sneeze and collapse the entire station? Vorath, calm down. Take a breath. Or whatever it is your species does. I tried to calm my respiratory spiracles. It didn't really work. Now, the commander continued, did you happen to notice what changed between the first strike and the second? She hit harder. Obviously. Yes. But why? What was the motivating factor? I thought about it, replayed the scene in my mind. The human's face, red with embarrassment. The anger. She was upset, I said slowly. I laughed at her. You laughed at a human, the commander said, and I swear I could hear amusement in her voice. Vorath, have you not read any of the briefing materials on human psychology? I skimmed them? Then let me fill you in on something crucial. Humans have this peculiar trait. When they're embarrassed, when they're angry, when they're pushed to their limits, their bodies release chemicals that temporarily enhance their physical capabilities. They call it adrenaline. And apparently, it can make them significantly stronger than their baseline measurements would suggest. That's cheating. That's biology. And it gets better. According to the reports, humans can apparently access this enhanced state through emotional stimulation. Fear, anger, the desire to protect something they care about. Under the right circumstances, they become capable of feats that should be impossible. I felt my carapace going cold. You're telling me that these creatures get stronger when they're upset? That's exactly what I'm telling you. There are documented cases of human females lifting vehicles to save their offspring. Males who've fought off multiple attackers while severely injured. Children who've performed rescue operations that should have been physically impossible. That's insane. That's absolutely insane. That's humanity. Now, here's what you're going to do. You're going to go back to that exercise yard, you're going to apologize to that recruit, and you're going to continue their training. And, Vorath? Yes, Commander? Try not to make them angry. We can't afford to replace any more equipment. The transmission ended, leaving me alone with my thoughts and Plexus, who was staring at me with wide eye stalks. Sir, he said slowly, should I be worried? We should all be worried, Plexus. We've just invited apex predators onto our station and handed them military training. What could possibly go wrong? I made my way back to the exercise yard, walking slowly, trying to figure out how exactly one apologizes for laughing at someone who then proceeded to demonstrate that they could probably punch their way through your skull if sufficiently motivated. The humans were still standing where I'd left them, looking uncertain. Right, I said, trying to project calm authority. So, that happened. Sir, I'm really sorry about the equipment, Keiko started, but I held up a manipulator to stop her. No. That's on me. I shouldn't have done what I did. It was unprofessional. The humans exchanged glances. Malcolm spoke up. Sir, are you apologizing? Don't make this harder than it already is. Yes, I'm apologizing. I underestimated you, and I mocked you for what I perceived as weakness. That was wrong. So, said the one with glasses, whose name I would learn was Felix, does this mean we passed the strength assessment? I looked at the crater in the floor, the debris embedded in the walls, the small scorch marks where the energy discharge had singed the composite material. You know what? Sure, you all passed the strength assessment, with flying colors. Congratulations. They cheered, actually cheered, like they'd accomplished something instead of terrifying their instructor into a minor existential crisis. However, I continued, and they quieted down, we still need to establish proper baselines for the rest of you. And we need to do it without destroying any more equipment. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to move to the secondary yard, where we have older, less expensive equipment, and you're all going to demonstrate your capabilities, calmly, without emotion. Do you understand? They nodded. Good. And one more thing. I need you all to understand something. The GDI operates on multiple worlds, in multiple environments, alongside multiple species. What just happened here? That display of whatever that was? It cannot happen in the field. You need to learn control. You need to learn discipline. Because if you can't control yourselves, you're not assets. You're weapons. And weapons that fire randomly are just as dangerous to their allies as to their enemies. Keiko raised her hand. Sir, I didn't mean to. I know you didn't. That's why we're here. That's why you're training. So that when the time comes, when you're in a real combat situation, you know exactly what you're capable of. And more importantly, you know exactly how to control it. I led them to the secondary yard, my mind racing. The next 8 weeks were going to be very different from what I'd planned. I couldn't just put these humans through standard training. I needed to understand them, understand what made them tick, what triggered those chemical responses the commander had mentioned, what their actual limits were. And most importantly, I needed to make sure that when they left this station, they were ready. Because if Command was recruiting humans, it meant things were getting serious out there. It meant the GDI needed every advantage it could get. Even if that advantage came in the form of soft, pink creatures who could apparently punch through walls when properly motivated. The secondary yard was older, the equipment more worn, but hopefully more resilient, or at least cheaper to replace. All right, I said. Let's try this again. Everyone line up. We're going to test strength, speed, endurance, and reflexes. And we're going to do it methodically, scientifically, boringly. Can't make any promises on that last one, sir, Malcolm said, and several of the other humans made that choking laughter sound again. I was beginning to suspect that training humans was going to age me prematurely. One by one, they stepped up to the equipment. And one by one, they surprised me. Not with displays of impossible strength like Keiko had shown, but with consistency, with determination. They weren't the strongest species I'd trained. They weren't the fastest. They weren't the most naturally talented. But they didn't quit. Even when the exercises got harder, even when I increased the gravity, even when I could see they were struggling, they kept going. Why? I finally asked, stopping the session. Why do you keep pushing? Your bodies are clearly at their limits. You could ask for a rest. You could take a break. Why don't you? A female human named Rita, who had been running laps in twice normal gravity for the last 20 minutes, stopped and leaned against the wall, gasping for breath. Because, sir, she panted, we didn't come all this way, didn't leave our homes and families to quit the first day. Yeah, added another, a male named James, who was currently hanging from a pull-up bar with his arms shaking. We're not here to be the best. We're here to be good enough. Good enough for what? I asked. Malcolm, who was spotting James, looked at me with those dark eyes. Good enough to stand beside the other species. Good enough to prove we belong here. Good enough to make our planet proud. And there it was. Pride. Not individual pride, but species pride. They weren't doing this for themselves. They were doing it for every human who would come after them. I felt something shift in my perception. These weren't defective recruits. They weren't broken. They were just different. And maybe, just maybe, different was exactly what the GDI needed. All right, I said, my voice softer than before. Break time. 15 minutes. Hydrate, rest, and then we're moving on to combat drills. As they collapsed in various states of exhaustion, I realized something. I'd been wrong about humans. Completely, utterly wrong. They weren't weak. They were just saving their strength. And when they decided to use it? Well, I'd seen what happened to the force plate. The real question was, what would happen when they faced a real enemy? I had a feeling I was going to find out, sooner than I wanted to, because in the distance, barely audible over the sounds of the training yard, I could hear the station's alert system beginning its warning cycle. Something was coming, something that would test everything these humans had learned, and probably several things they hadn't. This was going to be one hell of a rotation. The alarm wasn't supposed to go off during basic training. Station Kappa-9 was a backwater facility, deliberately chosen for its distance from conflict zones. We trained recruits here precisely because nothing ever happened. Well, that policy just went out the airlock. All personnel to battle stations. Repeat. All personnel to battle stations. Unidentified vessels approaching at combat speed. This is not a drill. My communication implant crackled to life. Commander Thrace's voice cut through the chaos. Vorath, get those recruits to the secure bunkers. Now. Understood, Commander. I spun toward the humans, who had gone from exhausted to alert in about 2 seconds flat. You heard the announcement. Follow me. Stay together, and do exactly what I say. Sir, Malcolm stepped forward, his exhaustion apparently forgotten. We can help. Help? You've had exactly 4 hours of training. You don't even know which end of a plasma rifle to hold. Then maybe you should teach us. Quickly. I wanted to argue. Every protocol, every regulation, every ounce of common sense screamed at me to lock these untrained civilians away where they couldn't hurt themselves or others. But as I looked at their faces, I saw something that made me hesitate. They weren't scared. Well, they were, but they weren't letting it control them. Their eyes were clear, focused, ready. Fine, but you do exactly what I say, when I say it. Understood? Yes, sir. I led them at a sprint toward the armory, my legs clicking against the metal floor. The station shuddered as defensive shields activated. Through the viewports, I could see ships emerging from jump space. Not GDI vessels. These were raiders, probably Kresh pirates, judging by the irregular hull configurations. How many recruits do we have on station? Rita asked, keeping pace beside me despite her shorter legs. 83, counting you 15. The rest are Quellan, Mordani, and a handful of Vex. And actual soldiers? 32. Station Kappa-9 isn't exactly a fortress. We burst into the armory. I started pulling weapons from the racks, showing them the basics. Safety mechanisms. Trigger discipline. How to check the charge pack. This is a standard GDI pulse rifle, I explained, demonstrating with quick, efficient movements. Point the business end at the thing you want to stop existing. Pull this trigger. Try not to hit your friends. Questions? Felix raised his hand. Is there a stun setting? This isn't a toy. There's shoot and don't shoot. That's it. Right, just checking. He took the rifle I handed him, his hands steady despite never having held one before. Another tremor rocked the station. Closer this time. They're docking, I muttered. Commander, what's the situation? Thrace's voice came through, tense. Raiders have breached Deck 7. They're pushing toward the power core. We're holding them at Junction 12, but we're outnumbered. How fast can you get those humans ready? I looked at the 15 faces staring back at me, scared but determined, untrained but willing. We're on our way. Vorath, I said, get them to the bunkers, not bring them to a firefight. With respect, Commander, we need every hand we can get. These humans, they're different. Trust me. A pause. Then, on your head, be it. Junction 12. Move fast. I distributed the rest of the weapons. Keiko hefted her rifle like it weighed nothing, which, knowing what I now knew about human strength, it probably didn't. Listen carefully, I said. We're going to proceed down Corridor 9 to Junction 12. Stay in formation. Cover each other. If someone goes down, leave them. The medical teams will retrieve casualties. Your job is to keep moving, keep fighting. Understood? Leave them? James looked horrified. But war isn't pretty. It isn't fair. And it certainly isn't about heroic rescues. You save who you can by completing the mission. Now move out. We advanced through the corridor, the sounds of combat growing louder. Energy weapons discharged somewhere ahead, their distinctive whine echoing off the walls. Someone was screaming. The acrid smell of burning metal and something worse filled the air. Contact front, I shouted as the first raider rounded the corner. The Kresh was massive, easily 2.5 meters tall, covered in thick scales and wielding a weapon that looked like it had been assembled from scrap metal and malice. I fired. My shot took him in the shoulder, spinning him around. But Kresh were tough, and he wasn't down. Then Keiko fired. Her shot, fueled by who knows what emotional cocktail of fear and determination, hit him center mass with enough force to lift him off his feet and slam him into the wall behind him. "Holy," Felix started. "Keep moving," I barked. We pushed forward. More raiders appeared, and the corridor became a nightmare of energy bolts and shouted orders. I watched in amazement as the humans adapted on the fly. Malcolm and Rita covered each other like they'd trained together for years. Felix, despite his nervous demeanor, placed his shots with calculated precision. James was actually laughing, which was either very brave or very stupid. We reached Junction 12 to find it in chaos. Commander Thrace and her squad were pinned down behind makeshift barricades. The raiders had brought heavy weapons, and our defensive positions were deteriorating fast. "Vorath, what took you so long?" Thrace ducked as a plasma bolt vaporized the air where her head had been. "Got caught up. Orders, Commander? We need to push them back to the breach point and seal it. But we can't get close enough with that heavy repeater they've set up." I scanned the battlefield. The repeater was positioned at the far end of the junction, protected by a squad of Kresh. Taking it out would require getting through their firing line. Suicide for any conventional soldier. But these weren't conventional soldiers. Keiko, Malcolm, Rita, Felix, with me, the rest of you, suppressing fire on my mark. I explained the plan quickly. It was insane. It violated every tactical doctrine I'd ever learned. But looking at these humans, I realized that conventional tactics weren't going to work anyway. "Are you serious?" Keiko asked when I finished. "Completely. Can you do it?" She looked at the others. They nodded. "Yeah," she said. "Yeah, we can do it." "On 3 then. 1, 2, 3. The other humans opened fire, their concentrated barrage forcing the raiders to take cover. In that moment of confusion, Keiko, Malcolm, Rita, and Felix charged, not toward the sides, where cover might be found. Not with tactical precision and careful advancement. They just ran straight at the heavy repeater like a pack of feral predators who'd forgotten they were supposed to be the prey. The raiders, shocked by this display of apparent madness, hesitated, just for a second. But a second was all the humans needed. Malcolm went low, sliding across the deck, plating like he was trying to steal a base in whatever primitive sport humans played. His momentum carried him under the repeater's firing arc, and he came up shooting, taking out the gunner. Rita and Felix went high, using some kind of coordinated leap that I didn't even know humans could do. They landed on opposite sides of the emplacement, firing as they moved. And Keiko? Keiko just grabbed the repeater and ripped it off its mounting. I'm not exaggerating. She literally tore a military-grade heavy weapon out of its reinforced bolts and threw it at the remaining raiders like it was a recreational object. The 200-kilogram weapon hit them like the wrath of an angry god. "Push forward," Commander Thrace shouted, and suddenly we were advancing, the raiders breaking before us like water against stone. We drove them back through the breach, the humans fighting with a ferocity that made even the battle-hardened Kresh think twice about standing their ground. When the last raider retreated back to their ship, we sealed the breach and collapsed back against the walls, gasping for breath. "Sound off," I called out. "Casualties?" "James took a graze on his arm," Malcolm reported. "Nothing serious. Everyone else is green." Green. Military slang for operational. These civilians, with 4 hours of training, had just repelled a pirate raid and were calling themselves operational. Commander Thrace approached, her 4 eyes cycling through what I recognized as expressions of disbelief. "Vorath, explain to me how your recruits, your barely trained human recruits, just did what I think they did." "Honestly, Commander, I'm still trying to figure that out myself." She looked at the humans, who were checking each other for injuries and generally acting like they hadn't just performed a tactical maneuver that would be talked about in military academies for cycles to come. "The other trainers need to see this," she said finally. "All of them. If humans can do this with minimal training, imagine what they could do with proper instruction." "If they don't give themselves heart failures first," I muttered. "Do you know they have only one cardiovascular organ? One, and they push themselves like this?" Keiko, overhearing, grinned. It was a disturbing expression, showing far too many flat teeth. "Sir, if we're going to die anyway, might as well make it count." "That's not inspiring. That's terrifying." "Yeah," she agreed cheerfully, "but it works." The next few hours were a blur of damage reports, medical evaluations, and incident documentation. The raiders had been driven off, but not without cost. 3 GDI personnel killed, 7 injured. Significant structural damage to Deck 7. But we'd held. Against a force that should have overwhelmed us, we'd held. The humans were in medical, being scanned and poked and prodded by increasingly bewildered doctors who couldn't understand how beings so fragile had survived combat with so few injuries. I found myself in Commander Thrace's office, giving my report. The preliminary assessment was clearly inadequate. I concluded. Human capabilities cannot be measured by standard metrics. Their emotional responses trigger physiological changes that enhance their combat effectiveness. They work together instinctively, adapting to battlefield conditions with minimal communication. And they demonstrate a willingness to engage in tactically unsound maneuvers that somehow succeed through sheer audacity. In other words, Thrace said dryly, they're crazy, and it works. Essentially, yes, Commander. She leaned back in her chair. The Council isn't going to believe this. Humans have been petitioning for full GDI membership for 3 cycles. We've always told them they weren't ready, that they lacked the necessary capabilities. With respect, Commander, we were wrong. They don't lack capabilities. They just have different ones. Ones we didn't know how to measure. Agreed. I'm recommending immediate acceleration of the Human Integration Program. Full training facilities on Earth. Recruitment expansion. The works. I nodded slowly. They'll need specialized instruction. Standard protocols won't work. Then, we'll develop new ones. Starting with you. I blinked. All 6 eyes. Commander? Congratulations, Vorath. You're being promoted to Director of Human Combat Training, effective immediately. You'll report directly to the Council and oversee the development of human-specific military doctrine. But I don't know anything about training humans. You know more than anyone else. You've seen what they can do. You've fought beside them. That makes you the expert. She stood, signaling the end of the meeting. Your first assignment is to write a comprehensive manual on human combat capabilities. I want it on my desk in 2 weeks. 2 weeks? Commander, with all due respect. 2 weeks, Director. Dismissed. I left her office in a daze. Director, me, in charge of integrating humanity into the GDI military structure. I found the humans in the recreation area, apparently having been cleared by medical. They'd changed out of their damaged training gear and were eating something that smelled vaguely toxic, but which they assured me was just pizza. Sir! They started to stand, but I waved them back down. At ease. I wanted to thank you, all of you. What you did today. It was remarkable. We just did what needed doing, Malcolm said simply. No, you did far more than that. You changed how every species in the galaxy is going to view humanity. Before today, you were the newcomers, the primitives, the species that barely qualified for uplift status. Now you're the ones who held the line when everyone else was ready to fall. Back. Keiko smiled that disturbing smile again. So we passed the evaluation? I couldn't help it. I laughed. That same chittering, clicking laugh that had started this whole mess. Passed? You didn't just pass. You rewrote the entire assessment criteria. Congratulations, recruits. Welcome to the Galactic Defense Initiative. Try not to break too many more things, they cheered, clapping each other on the back and making their strange choking laughter sounds. Oh, and one more thing, I added. You're all being assigned as my personal training cadre. We're going to Earth to train the next generation of human soldiers. I hope you're ready. Earth? Rita's eyes widened. We're going home? Temporarily. We need to establish proper training facilities there, and we need experienced human soldiers to help develop the curriculum. That's you. Felix pushed his glasses up his nose. Sir, we literally just finished our first day of training. Yes, and in that one day, you defended a military installation from pirate raiders and lived to tell about it. I'd say that makes you experienced. Fair point. We stood there for a moment, instructor and students, different species brought together by chance and necessity. The galaxy was about to change. Humanity was no longer the weak newcomers, the species that needed protection. They were protectors now. Warriors. Soldiers. And I was the poor fool who had to teach them how to channel that incredible, terrifying potential into something that wouldn't get them all killed. All right, I said finally. Rest up tonight. Tomorrow, we start real training. And trust me, today was the easy part. They groaned, but they were smiling. Always smiling. These humans. As I walked away, I heard James say, You know, I think he's starting to like us. Starting? Keiko replied. Did you see his face when I threw that repeater? Pretty sure that was respect. Or terror, Felix suggested. With humans? What's the difference? Malcolm asked. Their laughter followed me down the corridor. And despite everything, despite the chaos they'd brought into my orderly life, I found myself looking forward to what came next. Training humans, it turned out, wasn't going to be the easiest rotation of my career. It was going to be the most important one. The galaxy had no idea what was coming, but I did. I'd seen it firsthand. The determination, the adaptability, the sheer stubborn refusal to quit. Humanity wasn't just joining the Galactic Defense Initiative. They were going to revolutionize it. And I was going to have the best seat in the house for the whole show. Assuming I survived the experience, of course. With humans, that was never a guarantee. But it was definitely going to be interesting.